Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever this is blessing you, whenever this is blessing you, this is Brian Clark Music 5 a.m. Motivation. The beginning of season 2. You can catch season 1, all 16 episodes, YouTube. Subscribe to Brian Clark Music. Also Anchor Podcast. And of course, Spotify. Today, I wanted to start the season off with an experience I had this week about when it feels right, it must be right. But the title of this is When It Feels Right, It's God. What do I mean by that? I had 3 experiences this week. You ever go to or have a decision that you have to make, something simple as going to a grocery store on 5th Street or going to the grocery store on 4th Street. And then initially you were going to go to the grocery store on 5th Street, but last minute something just told you to go to the grocery store on 4th Street. So you went to the grocery store on 4th Street, and then you ended up getting a good deal. Something special happened on 4th Street. And you're like, man, after you left, maybe you saw somebody, you hadn't seen somebody in a while or whatever. You know what I mean? You've had these times before. And after you left, like, wow, okay, that was the reason why, I felt so the urge to go to 4th Street. That's what I'm talking about. I had 3 of those experiences this week. When it feels right, it's God. So the first one actually just happened last night. My wife and I and daughter were trying to figure out where we're going to go eat, and we couldn't figure it out. It's pretty typical for us on a Saturday night, not knowing where to go. So sometimes we'll just get in the car and just drive until we figure out where we're going to go and just go to that place. But we did figure out that we wanted to go to Gateway Market downtown. But as I was driving down the interstate, I knew that, there could be another place we could go. And if I could figure it out, we could make a switch. We love Gateway Market. And then all of a sudden I was like, hey, should we go to Quentin's? And my daughter was like, oh, that place downtown. I was like, yeah. And my wife's like, yeah. And so we went. And as soon as we walked in, I saw my good friend Galen that I hadn't seen in a while. Galen lives downtown area, and right when I seen him, I said to myself, this is why I had that urge. When it feels right, it's God. Second time was earlier this week. And the funny thing about all 3 of these situations that I had, it all tied me back to 3 of my good friends that I don't see often anymore because we're adults and we have lives and we have a lot going on. So, everybody knows I'm in the car business, so I had to go down to AutoZone to get a battery for a vehicle that is on my lot. And as I get in there, this young black man's in there helping me, going through the sales process. He's doing really well, and gets me the battery, comes outside with all his tools, starts putting the battery in. And I was really, really tired at the time because I had a pretty busy afternoon at work, and normally I'm really sociable, especially with a young black man. I get to talking and introduce myself, that type of thing, and I just wasn't really feeling like doing that. But again, I had that feeling, Brian, you need to say something to this young man. You need to say something to this young man. He's doing a really good job. He's put the battery in. He's helped you out. Spark up a conversation. Get a little story about this guy. So I did. I sparked up the conversation. Next thing you know, I told him I did music. And he's like, oh, do you happen to know my Naeem Abdullah? And I'm like, wow, blown away. Everybody knows that Naeem is one of my best friends, and he lives in Texas right now. And I'm like, yeah, man, he's one of my best friends. I'm like, how? He's like, yeah, he's my uncle. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, all right. So Naeem's nephew from Ohio moved to Des Moines, be closer to family, works at AutoZone, gonna go to the University of Iowa, that type of thing. So the next thing you know who I get a phone call a couple of days later from? Of course, Naeem. You know, there was a reason when he was like, Naeem, you're the one that he's always talking about, Des Moines boys. I'm like, yeah, man, that's me. It's just crazy how that happened. The second one, everybody knows I'm a big LeBron James fan, huge LeBron James fan. And then just last weekend, they had a big weekend against the Bucks and the Clippers. You know what I mean? And we had to get both these games just for respect. But I'm not gonna get off topic about that. We'll be here all day talking about LeBron. But I get it as I'm watching the LA game against the Clippers. You know, I'm telling my family not to mess with me. I'm in my zone. Everybody knows when the game's on, important game's on, I'm in my zone. Don't mess with me. I'm in my zone. And I had the phone sitting next to me on the couch, and I see that it's ringing. And for the sake of the story, I'm not going to give you the name of the friend because I don't know if they've told everybody the news that they told me. But I'm sitting there, I see that my good friend's calling. And, you know, we don't talk often, and he definitely don't call often. And I'm thinking in my head, looking at the TV, looking at the phone, looking at the TV, looking at the phone. And I'm like, all right, I should answer this because he doesn't call much. You know, I am available right now. There must be something that he's got to say to me. You know, he's not just calling just to talk. That's just not the situation. So, again, guys, when it feels right, it must be God. And I answered the phone. And then, you know, we're talking. You know, I'm kind of like, all right, what do you want? You know, got the game on, trying to watch the game, trying to talk to him. And then next thing you know, his wife's on the phone with him. And then I kind of figured out what was going on. And they eventually told me that they were pregnant and they were expecting. And it was great news. You know, I needed to answer that phone call. You know, I needed to be in that moment with him. You know, I needed to share that moment with him at that time. You know, they were calling me to give me good news. You know, with the young man, I needed to talk to him to know that there was a connection that we had between each other. And on our way to Gateway, you know, I needed to figure out where else we were gonna go because it was time for me to see Galen. It had been a while, and it was time for me to see him. When it feels right, it's right. And that's 3 small examples of how God will give you the answers. God will guide you in the right directions. You have to open yourself up to those urges, and there's a reason why you're getting those urges. You're not really getting them from yourself, right? Because think about it, in the situation with the young man, myself was telling me just to be quiet, just allow him to get this battery done and go back to work. I'm tired, but something was telling me that I needed to do more. I needed to open up to talk to him. That's God, guys. God is there for us to guide us. God gives us cues. He gives us signs, and we have to be open to seeing those signs. Okay, we have to make a conscious effort every day when we wake up saying, what are you going to tell me today? What is it that you need me to do for you today? But if we don't have that, if we're not humble as humans, knowing that there's a creator above, then we'll miss those signs. If we're too caught up in our own mind, our own understanding, we'll miss those signs. And to take it to a step further, God will give us those signs for advancements. How many times have you in your life have felt the urge to make a really big decision in your life and just didn't quite know what direction you were supposed to go? And then eventually you made that decision or that urge, like this is what it is. And maybe at that point in time you didn't know if you were making the right decision, but maybe a month, maybe 2 months, maybe 6 months, or maybe even a week later, you got the confirmation that you made that right decision. There's an event that has happened in your life, and you're like, you know what? That's why this is why I had to make this decision. This is why I had to make that decision, and it all comes back in full circle. That's God. When it feels right, it's God. So when it feels right, go ahead and do it. It's always going to be a positive in the end. You might not know exactly what the answer is or what the reasoning is at the moment, because we're on His timing. It's not always our timing. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I'm in the car business. I worked at Mercedes-Benz, and I would always drive past Willis Automotive every day going into Mercedes-Benz. And you know, my one of my good friends, I graduated with Matt Willis, and he always wanted me to come and work for him. And I would drive by that place every day on the way to work, and I always think, you know, one day I just know I'm eventually work at Willis. Didn't know when, I didn't know what I would be doing if I did it. I just had that feeling that at some point I would eventually make my way over there. Everybody knows that they're the best dealership in the state. And even though I couldn't leave at the time because it just wasn't the right time, I was working at Mercedes. I was doing very well. I was new in the industry. I was building up my portfolio as a salesperson. And some circumstances happened at Mercedes, and Matt and I would talk once or twice a year to try to see what we could do to get me over there, and it just never really seemed right. And then one day, I'll never forget it. You know, I had the opportunity to advance at Mercedes-Benz, and then I'm sitting outside. There's a young coworker that was standing right next to me that I was training, and I said to him, I said, "It's my time. It's time for me to go." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "It's time for me to go." Like, it just hit me. You know, I didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't know when I was going to go. I didn't know how the outcome would be. I just had that feeling inside that it was right. And I had to take that faith, that leap of faith, to go into the unknown. And it was the unknown. You know, the answer of why I left didn't come right away. You know, when I went over to Willis, I sacrificed about $40,000 I left on the table, you know, that I passed up at a Mercedes opportunity to go to Willis. But I went there for the long-term decision, and I had to go through some growing pains while I was at Willis to get to the point where I could say, now this is why I left. And now, almost 2 years in my tenure at Willis, I'm doing exactly what I was going to do at Mercedes, what I passed up. And I'm in a better situation. I'm working for a better company, and I have a better work-life balance. Everything is better. But I wouldn't have got to this point if I didn't take that leap of faith and listen to the cues, that feeling that God was trying to push me to. I didn't do it off my understanding. And there's so many different situations like that with so many different people. My wife had the same situation where she left her job, and it was a very, very difficult, challenging opportunity for her, and she didn't understand why this was being brought to her attention, but she just knew that it felt right and she had to do it. And then eventually we had a situation with our son where we had to move daycares, and we're in between daycares right now, and then we got him into a center which will start in a few months once we get off the waiting list. And then she looked at me and she said, "This is why I was supposed to get this job." And I looked at her and I said, "Yep, we got the answer of why you had to leave Salmons and go to where you're at now." And we kind of smiled at each other and held each other's hands. We were in the car, and ladies and gentlemen, God is out here working. He's out here guiding us. We just have to have so much faith and belief going into the open doors of uncertainty, being guided by him, being pushed by him. But you gotta let him push you, okay? Because guess what? When it feels right, it's God. I want you guys, challenge you guys to open your minds, to open your hearts to his faith, to his blessings, to his grace, his mercy. He's waiting for you to walk to him so he can give you so much more on this earth, to give you heaven on earth. I hope that this message touched you. I hope this message brings you joy. I hope this message brings you faith. I hope this message brings you some sort of understanding of things that are going on in your life right now. And I just encourage you to practice opening up and trying to see and hear exactly what it is that he's trying to tell you every single day of your life. God bless. This is Brian Clark Music. Remember, if it feels right, it's God. Subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Brian Clark Music on YouTube. Subscribe to that. 5 a.m. motivation. Be blessed.